Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Children's Museum of Atlanta's Town Square, a series designed for families, educators, and the community to learn about and discuss important issues. I'm Karen Kelly, Director of Exhibits and Education here at the museum. The Children's Museum of Atlanta is a gathering place where all are invited to learn, engage, and explore in the way that children learn best, through play. Over the past months, we have heard from families and educators who are seeking meaningful conversation, information, resources, and ideas to help them navigate this very challenging time. We are so fortunate to be able to engage our best and brightest in conversations that will hopefully enlighten, educate, and in some cases dispel any myths. If you missed our past Town Square conversations, they have been recorded and can be found on our blog, which you can access through our website, childrensmuseumatlanta.org, or on our YouTube channel. Again, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. The purpose of October's Coming Out Month is to recognize the impact that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals have had on history, locally, nationally, and internationally. To honor these contributions, we decided to have these important educational conversations over this next 3 weeks. This week, I am delighted to introduce you to Ann Miller, president of the Johns Creek PFLAG chapter and a trainer, which makes her so well qualified to speak to us today. I've learned a lot from my conversations with her, and I know you will as well. So Ann, what I'd love to start with is by asking you to talk a little bit about yourself, your work, and why you thought it was important today to participate in this discussion.
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you for having me here. I am a mom of 2 and a grandma of 1. And our youngest came out as transgender when he was 17. And this is a child that was assigned female at birth and came out as transgender. And he's 24 now, lives as a transgender gay man. And during those 7 years, I became involved with PFLAG. I first went for support for myself and then stayed and gave support to others. And that's really the hallmark of what PFLAG is educating and supporting families who have LGBTQ loved ones. Mm-hmm. The main reason I wanted to come today and do this discussion is to reduce misunderstanding around LGBTQ children, and also just to educate and support the LGBTQ community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It really is appreciated. So we realize this is a very dense topic with a lot of layers for parents and communities. Can we start with some of the important terms that might be new to some people, like gender expression? And can you speak to what that means and how it's used?
I sure can. So we're going to go to a little graphic here that's called the genderbread person. This is the graphic that I use when I talk with universities or businesses or churches. And it's a 1-page, easy to understand graphic. I'm actually going to start sort of at the bottom there where it says sex. This is your anatomical sex. This is when you are born. You come out and the doctor looks between your legs and says, it's a boy, it's a girl. Mm-hmm. And so that's I always start there because it's pretty easy for us all to understand. But what we know is that anatomical sex is not straightforward, boy, girl. There is also intersex, and there's, 40 some different chromosomal differences that can make an intersex person. So even anatomical sex is not straightforward. Mm-hmm. I go then up to the top with the brain, and this is where gender identity is formed. And it's important to know that gender identity is not how we think, but it's how it's innate. It's how we go through life and how we view life. So you'll see the little scales over on the right-hand side where it goes from 0 to lots, womanness and manness. And this is how we relate to the world. Mm-hmm. I'm going to use myself as an example, even though I'm a boring example. I was assigned female at birth, so my anatomical sex is female, and my gender identity is as a woman. I've always felt like a girl and a woman, and so I am considered cisgender. My anatomical sex and my gender identity are in alignment. Next, we have gender expression. This is the little part that's all outside. So this is how we, this would be more of the social construct part of gender. This is how we express our gender. It has absolutely nothing with our gender identity, but it can be in alignment with our gender identity. So again, I'm using myself. I have a very feminine expression. I like feminine clothes. I always have, even as a little girl, like twirly skirts. So that's my gender expression. It can vary from gender identity. So you might have a gender identity that is somewhere in the middle between man and woman, but your gender expression is very masculine or very feminine, or it might be in the middle too. And then attraction, you see pointing to the heart there on our genderbread person. We can be sexually attracted to somebody or romantically attracted to somebody. We're not going to talk a whole lot about sexual orientation, which is because we're talking about children here, and children do not experience sexual attraction. They may have a crush on somebody in school, but that's a romantic attraction. So until puberty hits, there really isn't much sexual attraction because children are not sexual. But they may have a romantic attraction, and those two can be in alignment. You can be sexually attracted to women or men, and you could be romantically attracted to women or men. Then they run differently, or they can run congruently. Again, all of these are on a scale from 0 to a lot, and so you can move those little scales however it fits you. So one of the terms that I use and will use quite often in this talk is gender expansive or gender expansive children. This is when their gender identity is going to be different than their anatomical sex. And they may or may not have words for that. They may or may not be transgender. They might be non-binary, which means that they're somewhere in the middle, or they might be gender fluid, which means some days they feel girl, some days they feel boy. And these are ways of being, remember, not thinking. So it's, even though we're going to talk about brain science here in a minute, but gender expansive is sort of an umbrella term that I use for all the individuals who are not cisgender.
Right. Great, thank you. So now you brought up brain science, let's dive into it. Despite the idea that you can turn somebody gay, lesbian, queer, or trans, the brain science says something very different. There's been some research in that area, and I would love to hear you talk about the research and what it tells us.
Okay, great. So there has been several studies. The most recent and the largest was done by the Cleveland Clinic, where they actually mapped the brain of cisgender people, remember I'm cisgender, and transgender individuals. Now, the brain mapping is sort of controversial in that all brains map differently based on our experiences in life and based on a whole host of factors, because brains are complicated matters. But what they found was that when they map the brain of transgender individuals, they map very similarly to their cis counterparts. So a transgender woman is going to map similarly to me, a cisgender woman. So trans and cis are going to map similarly. Again, brains are different. It doesn't mean that if you were to map your brain and it didn't map like the cisgender one, that you failed your transgender identity. That's not true. But what this shows us is that gender is innate. And it's this innateness. It's not a thinking. It's not something we children learn about and then become. It's innate. It's a knowing that most children realize very, very young their gender, and they're going to realize as gender is talked about and realized in maybe preschool or early school, they're going to realize either, yes, I do feel like what they're telling me I am, or I don't feel like what they're telling me I am. And so this can be, if the 98% of the children are going to be cisgender, about 2% are going to be gender expansive somewhere. And we know it at a very young age, and they feel different at a very young age. They may not express it They may not have the words for why they feel different. I know my child didn't have the words for it, but that doesn't mean they're not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
What we're looking for here with children, by the way, is persistent, consistent, insistent. That's sort of the standard of, do I have a transgender child? Or maybe I have a transgender child or a gender expansive child. So are they persistent in their feelings? Are they persistent in their likes? Are they consistent with messaging that this doesn't fit them? And insistent that this, the standards of girlness or boyness that do not fit them. These are what we're looking for.
Right. And that's true, I imagine, for lesbian and gay and queer children as well, that's the persistent, insistent, and consistent about it.
Well, the sexual orientation doesn't normally show up until after puberty. And there again, there can be periods of questioning, and that's why one of the cues in LGBTQIA, GPR, one of those cues is questioning, because individuals go through those stages.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. So no matter what, all children need to be affirmed for who they are and not who we think they should be. Can you speak to ways that parents can create the household environment as affirming to all, and how that might work?
I can. The first thing I want to say, I want to reiterate here that transgender children do not receive medical transition care. We're only talking about, when we talk about affirming a transgender child, we're only talking about social transition. We're not talking about any medical transition. So if you ever hear a politician say that medical transition is going on with children, that's just not true. That politician is either uninformed or purposely using inflammatory statements for political gain. One of the ways that we affirm children who are persistent and consistent in their gender expansiveness is by the use of pronouns. You use their correct pronouns. When they have told us that they are a boy, they feel like a boy, they identify as a boy, then we're going to be consistent. And if they want to have pronoun use change, then we're going to transition with that. That's what we mean by social transition, allowing their hair, more of that gender expression, allowing their hair, their clothes to be in alignment with where they feel. The vast majority of people who are going to watch this or have children are not going to have gender expansive children, right? Only about 2% are going to. So 98% of the people are just trying to create a loving human. So one of the things I always talk about is more gender neutral terms for our children and for our caregivers too. So I have a grandchild, he's 4. I'd say, look at the kid at the park, or, do you have, friends is a good gender neutral term. Kids over there, the kid riding the bike, the kid going down the slide instead of the little girl going down the slide and the little boy riding the bike, because they are just all kids. I like to use gender neutral terms for caregivers as well, instead of mommy and daddy. The caregiver. I think this is a loving way to teach children, because children have a lot of different caregivers. It's not just mommies and daddies that are raising children. It might be an aunt, it might be a grandma, it might be a guardian. So the caregiver in your world, the adult in your world, these are all loving ways to approach children. I believe all toys are gender neutral, so a wide variety of toys in the house, and really not putting any meaning on any of them. It doesn't mean anything. My grandchild, my grandchild loves to play jewelry, and he likes to put jewelry on. It means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just fascinating. They're kind of sparkly, and then he goes and plays trucks with them. So there's no meaning to either side of that.
Right. I think that's one of the things I think sometimes parents have a hard time remembering, that if a little boy who's presenting as a boy plays with a doll, it doesn't have any meaning, but that he's seen maybe his mom holding a doll or his dad holding a doll.
Right.
Role playing what an adult does, which is very natural for children in that age range.
And maybe he wants to grow up and be a pediatrician.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So not to assume. So just
I think I'll also put under this in the affirming household is not reacting or not reacting in a inflammatory way or an excitement way when a child comes home with
Mhm.
information on other kids or other kids' families.
Mhm.
So a child might come home from school and say, "Ooh, Rachel has two mommies. Why is that?" And so
Mhm.
we want to handle that in a very matter-of-fact way. Some families are like that. Some families have two mommies.
Right.
I wonder what your family will be like.
Right.
So just kind of open that up.
Right.
I wonder how, and I wonder who you'll love when you grow up. These are very nice, gentle ways to open up conversation and possibilities for the child.
So one of the ways of affirming a child who has decided is to use the pronouns, but I also know that's something people really stumble over and trip over. Can you kind of unpack the whole pronoun thing for our families? Because it is something you, as a parent, you will absolutely be running into. And again, you want to affirm the child.
Pronoun use has been one of the key protective factors against suicide risk for our teens, and a key protective factor for their long-term success. It can be difficult to change
Mhm.
a habit. So pronoun use is just a habit.
Mhm.
And I obviously did that in our family. We had to get used to it.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of deciding that it's important for your child, it's
Mhm.
important for their well-being, and making a decision to make that switch when they want it. We're always following the child's lead, and the child may not be ready for that. They may want to tell you, but not tell the rest of the world. And so we have to be um, ready to follow their lead. It's pretty much the gold standard of doing the right thing in parenting. Practicing it in your mind is the best way to do it. When you're folding laundry, I'm folding his clothes.
Mhm.
His clothes are going here. He is going to wear these socks. Just over and over, you're just practicing, and it does get more natural.
Mhm. No, that's actually very, very helpful. And as we are walking this room and wanting children to do it, and thank you so much for sharing the fact that this is a key factor in keeping these children mentally healthy and preventing suicides, respecting what they have asked us to do. Um, so, can you talk about some of the feelings and emotions that parents might have when they learn that their child is LGBTQIA plus? How are the what how, and how they can either get support or help or
Sure
expand that
can.
conversation?
Sure can. Going into this discussion on emotions for parents, knowing the difference in cultural backgrounds can play a key here, as well as just personality.
Mhm.
My husband and I had different approaches to our child coming out,
Mhm.
and we handled it differently, and we got support in different ways.
Mhm.
Religious convictions, ethnic pressures, all of these things can make a difference in a person's feelings, and I think they're all valid, and they all need to be processed. A parent might feel worry. They're worried about their child being discriminated against. They may have financial worries. There
Mhm.
are some, especially if a child is gender expansive. This is a child you're gonna want to see a gender therapist. That's probably not going to be covered by insurance, so that can be a financial burden. So there might be both perceived worry and actual real worry.
Mhm.
A parent might have fear of bullying, fear of what the future might hold. They might have sadness. They might have shame. I like to label the emotions as they come up.
Mhm.
Um, they might feel a sense of loss or grief because they thought that they had a girl and now they have a boy. They thought they had a boy, now they have a girl. So there's a sense of loss of what their dream was. Of
Mhm.
they have to kind of reframe. We like to talk about reframing,
Mhm.
and because all of us had a kind of a mental picture of what the child was going to be like, and then the child is themselves, and that they're not going to follow that. They have to follow their own dreams and their own
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
inclinations. So we all have.
And I think, okay, can you repeat that last little bit? I think you froze up.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Um, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. So there might be a sense of loss. Did we get that part?
Yeah, we got that part.
Okay, so we have to reframe. We work a lot with parents on reframing what their expectations were and what their expectations now are, and that their child is the same child, same heart, same loving spirit, same silly personality. The child is the same, even if the pronouns have changed. Another common feeling is to feel honored. I felt very honored when my child came out. Your child trusts you, that you're a safe enough person for them to share this big news with. So feeling honored and feeling grateful that they came to you finally. It's not uncommon for parents, and I felt this way too, to almost feel a sense of relief or a cog slipping into place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this explains so much, right?
Yeah.
Or if a child has been really withdrawn and sad, and they used to be happy and bubbly, and all of a sudden they're very sad and very anxious, it can explain that feeling. And so there's a sense of understanding, and that can help. That can actually be a relief for parents. So a wide variety of experiences on the parent side. We definitely recommend getting support as a parent. That's what PFLAG is known for, is giving parents support. You'll be able to talk with other parents who have been on the exact same journey as you. And now in the virtual world, you can go to any PFLAG anywhere. So if you don't want to go to your local one, go to one in a different state, because they're all virtual right now.
Yeah.
And we also recommend good therapy. Go to a therapist that understands LGBTQ issues. I have a whole list of them. If anybody needs it, they can contact me through you, and get if you can afford it, get some personal therapy. It may only take a session or two.
Right. Thank you. That's so helpful. So we are wrapping up. I don't know if there are any questions coming in. I don't see anybody in the chat, but we'll keep an eye out, see if anyone has any questions for us. But my last question is, what do the major pediatric organizations have to say about LGBTQ plus children? I knew I was going to stumble over that eventually, and adolescents.
So this is a really important question. Again, when we talk about affirming children, we are talking about a social transition and social affirmation. We are not talking about medical transition for children. Based on what that definition of affirmation is, all of these associations that you see listed on the screen have statements about affirming the child and affirming the child's lived experience. So this is not, this is a mainstream science-based way of looking. The brightest in childcare all agree that we should affirm, 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 and let your child lead you. So there they all are. They all have statements about affirmation, especially gender-expansive children. We know that when children are affirmed, they are better able to cope with life. They score better on tests. They achieve more in their life. They are happier. They report less mental health, anxiety, and depression. So across the board, all of the major medical associations and psychological associations agree on the treatment.
Great. So I want to circle back a little. I think we've got a couple minutes. We talked about affirming, and you mentioned that also, that basically 2% of kids come through this. So the other 98% need to be allies. Can you talk about what it looks like to be an ally?
Yes. So the 2% are going to maybe be gender expansive, but the likelihood that your child is going to come across a gender expansive friend, or maybe even date a gender expansive person sometime in their life, is pretty high. So this is what we're looking for, is that little girls are little girls, no matter what they were assigned at birth. And just, again, very matter of fact, if if the information is shared with you that there's a transgender child in the classroom, well, then that is great. The classroom must be a safe space if the child has been able to share that. And then we just go on with life as it is.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing here to fear. There's misunderstanding, sure, but let's realize that the gender is in the brain, and so that little brain of that child is the same brain or similar brain as all the other little girls in the classroom. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to relate similarly to, and that's why they feel transgender.
Right.
So this is what we want, more of a matter of fact. This is just part of life.
Right.
Some kids just feel this way,
Mm-hmm.
and kids accept that very easily.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any long preconceived notions.
Right.
You just explain it matter of factly and simply in simple terms.
Mm-hmm.
And then if your little friend is your little friend and they're nice to you, then that's great.
Great. So we've got a slide up, some of the resources we're going to share on our blog afterwards. Do you want to talk just through some of these organizations really quickly?
There are many organizations that do great work. These are some of the leaders for gender expansive children and LGBTQ folks in general. So PFLAG is the oldest and largest national organization for giving support to families. That's really where we send families for family support. National Center for Transgender Equality, they do an awful lot in the realm of legal issues, as name changes, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you can find all the latest information, the latest, how-to. They're the how-to people.
Mm-hmm.
The Human Rights Campaign is that little equal sign, big group of fighting for the rights of LGBTQ people. And then GLSEN is, as you can see, creating safe and inclusive schools. They're the foremost leaders in school environments and how to create affirming school environments.
Well, Anne, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say? Any last words?
I don't. I appreciate the opportunity to come and kind of dispel myths and dispel misunderstanding. And I hope that people reach out if they need or want any support.
We'll make sure they get to you if they do. Thank you so much. I also want to mention that we have our next session, our next interview is next Thursday with two teachers talking about in the classroom LGBTQ issues and how you can have an open and welcoming environment and also their experiences. And then our third town square this month is with the Center for Civil and Human Rights. And they will be talking about, as Anne mentioned just recently, the legal landscape, what's going on now that impacts all of these issues and challenges. I want to thank you all for joining us. Please share this with your friends, and it will be up on our YouTube channel and our blog this week. Have a wonderful day.